Hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Homemade. My name is Nicco Muratori. Super excited to be here with all of you today. Today we are joined by Chef Meg in the chat. We are also going to be joined by Melanie. We are partnering with Dole today, and Melanie is a registered dietitian with Dole. So you can ask Melanie questions in the chat, anything that you might want some more answers on for the nutritional facts about the recipe, but we'll be talking about that as we go. We also have Meg in the chat, so if you have any other questions that you want to come to me, feel free to put those into the chat for Meg. Super excited to be here on YouTube live today. And we are making a really awesome cake today. We are going to be doing a Matcha Mochi cake with a pineapple swirl. So some of you are probably familiar with matcha as a beverage, as a nice green tea beverage that folks love to drink in the morning. I love matcha myself. But putting matcha into a cake really takes it to a new level, adding that really lovely flavor into the cake. And then also, we're using a rice flour today. We're using mochiko flour, which is a sweet rice flour, and we're going to have that in our cake as opposed to using any gluten. So we're going to have a really kind of light, beautiful mochi and matcha cake that we're going to put a pineapple swirl into, make a little pineapple curd, swirl that into the cake. And this is a really awesome cake that you can make ahead of time, keep it room temperature, bring it to your next block party, bring it to a friend's house this summer for a barbecue. Really awesome dish. Super excited to get into it with all of you today. First up, we're going to start working on our pineapple curd. And so we've got a really big, beautiful pineapple here. And so we won't need this entire thing, but we will need a fair amount of this pineapple. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start to, we're going to cut this pineapple up, and we're going to think about making our pineapple curd. So we have a few different things that we need to do, and if you've never cut a pineapple yourself before, today is the day to learn. Many folks often buy the pre-cut pineapple, and that is generally much more expensive, where you can buy a whole big, beautiful pineapple, and you'll be able to, be able to use this for other dishes throughout your week. Now, Melanie, I've noticed that we've been seeing some different stickers on some of our Dole fruit that I've seen in the grocery store, such as pineapple, bananas. Can you talk to us a little bit about those new stickers that we're seeing on the fruit?
Yes, absolutely. We are celebrating with the new release of the new Lilo and Stitch movie from Disney. So on all of our pineapples and bananas, you'll see Lilo and Stitch themed stickers. And we love doing this. We've been partnering with Disney for years. And if you go to dole.com, we have a complete Disney Lilo and Stitch theme landing page where you can get these awesome downloadables, especially for kids. They're called peel and play sticker sheets, where you can literally collect all the different stickers, and it's a coloring sheet, and it kind of gets the kids really excited about eating their fruit. So we have a lot of fun coming up over the next couple of months, but I love that this recipe, like you said, is such a good way to celebrate that idea of ohana and family that is like weaved through the entire movie. And I mean, what's better than bringing something nutritious, made with whole food ingredients, and can like kind of check all the boxes, like being gluten-free and dairy-free, delicious, and something adults and kids will both like. So yes, check out the Dole stickers and pineapple tags at the store. They're all super cute.
That's so cute. I've seen a couple of them, actually.
Yeah.
Haven't seen the movie yet, though. Very excited.
Oh my gosh, the movie's adorable. I took my kids and they love the cartoon version, but the live action Stitch is unbelievable. And the little girl that plays Lilo is just enchanting. Like, she's so cute. So it's a good one.
Well, I love the first one growing up, so I'll have to. We're going to have to go watch it.
Yeah, let's go after this.
Yeah. Awesome. So, got our pineapple cut up. The way I do it is I just take it off of the core. That center piece of the pineapple is very firm and hard. And so I just like to cut the pineapple off the core and then just cut it into some 1-inch cubes. And this will be fine to put into the blender. But first, we should have a taste and make sure we like the way our pineapple's tasting, because for this dish, we definitely want to use like a nice ripe pineapple with a lot of those natural sugars. So let's have a taste. That's a great pineapple. It's going to be perfect for this recipe.
I have to add here too, pineapples don't necessarily get sweeter as you let them sit on your counter. So like when they're picked, they're essentially like as sweet as they're going to get. So don't be afraid to buy it and use it right away, especially if it's fresh. If you leave it on your counter, it might get like juicier because the cells are kind of like breaking down a little bit, and the sugars are actually fermenting the longer it sits on your counter. So when you buy your pineapple, use it as quickly as possible.
That's great to know, because I think folks often think, oh, well, this will continue to ripen. But with the pineapple, you're saying all those sugars are already present, and there's no real win for letting it, quote unquote, continue to ripen on the counter.
Right.
That's really fascinating. So when you cut a whole pineapple, you notice you have a good amount left over. Melanie, you mentioned you were going to use half of a leftover pineapple that you already had at home. But
Yes.
if you have a bunch of pineapple left over, a great snack throughout the day. It'll keep in the fridge for a few days. Maybe you make the cake twice because you love it so much. But lots of things we can do with that extra pineapple. I'm going to set it to the side. We'll save that for some snacks later this afternoon. Just going to do a quick cleanup on my board here, and then we're going to start making our pineapple curd. So for making the pineapple curd, we have some pretty straightforward ingredients here. We're going to do an eggless pineapple curd today, and so this is a really nice way to make a pineapple curd or any curd in a pretty fast way, using a little bit of cornstarch as our thickening agent here, and adding a little bit of lemon juice and some lemon zest into this recipe as well, just to add another layer of delicious flavor and bright acidity. Melanie, can you talk to us a little bit about the benefits of using pineapple in the recipe here?
Well, it obviously brings natural sweetness, right? Like that's what we love about pineapple, that juicy sweetness. So here, instead of like using an icing that might have a lot of added sugar, the pineapple here is functioning as bringing all of that natural sugar in. So I think that's probably the best part, because it's a natural sweetness, not that added sugar that we get from white refined sugar.
Absolutely. And oftentimes when you hear about curds, whether it's a lemon curd or any other kind of curd that's used in dessert, generally they're loaded with sugar. And so I love that we're using this pineapple to really leverage those natural sugars, because this is a delicious pineapple off the bat, and it's going to be even better when we puree it a little bit and cook it down.
This seems like a good way to like use up a pineapple that maybe has been sitting on the counter and you got to use it. Like you could just process it, have it in the fridge or the freezer, and like put it into whatever.
Absolutely. I think if it's a little bit too juicy, or maybe it's gone a little too far, the texture's not amazing, this is a great way to cook it and then preserve it for later.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we make a double batch or a triple batch of the pineapple curd, and then we can keep that in the fridge for probably a week.
Okay,
So I'm just
great.
juicing a lemon here, and getting all my ingredients ready for our curd, and then we're going to start to blend this thing. So first step is to take our little blender here, or strong food processor, and we're going to add our 1.5 cups of pineapple into the food processor. Next up, I'm going to add in that lemon juice. And I'm going to puree just the two of these ingredients first, and then I'll add in that cornstarch right afterwards. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on high speed and blend this all up. This is looking wonderful, nice and pureed. And then next up, we're going to add in about 2 teaspoons of cornstarch here. And we're adding it in now so that we can really puree it and blend all that cornstarch in, so we don't get any strange kind of thick pockets when we go ahead and cook this. If you've ever cooked with cornstarch before, you'll know that if you made a slurry, maybe you've mixed it with some water and added it into a sauce or a stew to thicken it up slightly. In this case, we're adding it directly to our pineapple puree here, blending it all in, and then we're going to transfer it to our little pot here and cook our pineapple curd. So I'm going to go ahead and blend this one more time and make sure that we get all of that cornstarch evenly mixed up into our pineapple puree. All right, this is looking really good. Definitely nice and pureed. You can take a look at this right here. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to dump this into our small sauce pot. I'm just going to use a little spatula to scrape out all of that pineapple puree. And then we are going to turn our stove on to a low heat to start to get this pineapple curd cooking. We don't want to put this on a high heat right away, because we want to kind of gently warm this up to make sure that we're activating that cornstarch as it's cooking and not having it kind of get over thickened right away by having too much heat. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my stove onto a medium flame here. We're using an induction stove, but whatever your stove is at home, whether it's gas, electric, or induction, starting on like a medium heat would be a great place to start for this. It's only going to take about 3 or 4 minutes once it starts to warm up and cook, and we'll just keep our eyes on that texture and make sure that it's not getting too thick. So other than leveraging these wonderful natural sugars, Melanie, what are the other benefits of using a pineapple in a dish like this? Are there some vitamins and nutrients that we're getting from having pineapple?
Yes. So on our blog on the Dole site, I write a lot of nutrition focused articles that feature fruits and vegetables. So I pulled a couple today, and one that I thought was really interesting is that, vitamin C is the majority nutrient in pineapple. 1 cup actually provides 90% of your daily value of vitamin C. So 1 cup, it's amazing, but it helps protect your eyes, especially as you age. There was one study with over 23,000 people in it that showed those that received and consumed more pineapple or more vitamin C in their diet, which pineapple is a good source of, actually had nearly a 20% reduced risk of cataracts, which is that hazy condition where things are kind of fuzzy as you get older. So consuming pineapple can actually help that.
That's amazing. I'd love to hear that, because pineapple is one of my favorite fruits personally, and so if it can keep me with having great vision and giving me a good amount of vitamin C every day, I love that.
Yeah, it actually also has an enzyme called bromelain, which is unique to pineapple. And that is an enzyme that focuses on protein, breaking down protein. And there was another study that showed that bromelain actually can prevent, or has potential with more research, to prevent cancerous tumors of the skin. So it also helps promote collagen synthesis, which, collagen is all the rage. Pineapple has vitamin C, so there are a lot of benefits. These are just like 2: skin health, eye health, 2 major things that vitamin C and pineapples can help with. But if you're interested in more, you could always visit dole.com in our blog section.
That's super exciting. I love to hear that when we're eating something that, we think of sometimes having sweets as maybe not being the most healthy thing, but in this recipe, I love that we're using these natural sugars, but also getting these enzymes and these vitamins to be part of our part of the diet, which is really awesome. I'm just going to turn my stove down a little bit here. My pineapple curd is starting to bubble, and I'm just going to use my whisk and just kind of keep whisking this constantly until we notice that this pineapple curd starts to thicken up. And what we're looking for is really a texture where it's going to coat the back of a spatula or coat the back of a spoon, because once that cools down to room temperature, we'll be able to dollop that into the top of the cake before we bake it. And so I'm just going to keep giving this a whisk for another moment here. It smells amazing, just that little bit of lemon juice with that pineapple, adding a touch of acidity to kind of temper some of that sweetness. It smells really amazing kind of as it's steaming here on the stove.
What else would you use it for? Like if you did make a double batch and have it in the fridge?
I think this would be delicious in so many different kind of summertime desserts. It would also be a lovely, this is something that you could possibly eat with some yogurt if you wanted to have a sweetened yogurt with a natural sugar in the morning. Having a kind of a splash of this or a dollop of this pineapple curd on top of that. If you're buying some unsweetened yogurt, could be a really nice way to not have any added sugar, but just be using some natural sugars. I'm a huge pineapple for breakfast in the morning person, so I think that would be my go-to, is trying to add a little yogurt and granola dish with some of this pineapple curd if I didn't have any fresh fruit to eat that day.
I feel like this with some coconut yogurt or coconut ice cream and getting kind of like a pina colada thing going would be really good.
I think that would be delicious.
Love it.
Melanie, any other ideas that you have for what you think you would do with it?
I don't know. I've been making a lot of Dole Whips lately, DIY Dole Whips. So maybe it's like an extra topping to have on the topping bar for that, like for the kids.
Absolutely.
I love yogurt. I mean, I wonder like if it'd be good on like oatmeal or I don't know, even like toast with cottage cheese.
Absolutely. I think a little, yeah, some of these sweet and savory combinations would be really delicious,
Yeah.
or like a sweeter oats in the morning. But again, trying not
Yeah.
to use tons of brown sugar or refined sugars. Using this natural sugar, I think, would be delicious there. It would also make a really great tart. You could make, instead of a lemon tart, make a pineapple tart. And there's a lot of really awesome gluten-free and dairy-free crusts out there these days that you can make at home to make another healthy dessert with this pineapple curd. I think that would be quite delicious as well. So we got breakfast, lunch options, dessert options.
Throw it on your charcuterie board. Just see what
Yeah.
happens. You
Like a
know?
little jam that you put on the charcuterie
Yeah.
board. I love that as well. Another thing you could bring to a summer barbecue or a picnic. All right, my curd has started to thicken up really nicely, and I'm going to stop it here. I'm getting some big bubbles that are kind of splashing at me, and so that is indicative of this curd really kind of thickening up and heating up. And so as soon as we just get couple more seconds here, I'm going to shut this off, and we're going to taste it, and we'll call it good there. So I'm going to turn my stove off, pull this off the heat, and if you're going to be doing this in, if you're making this curd to put into the cake right away, we're going to want to get this into the fridge so it can cool down pretty rapidly, because we want to get it to a temperature where we can dollop it into the cake so it's not super warm. And so for today, I actually have a little bowl of some curd I made earlier, a little bit of swap out curd here, but when it is cooled down, this is kind of the texture that we're going to be looking for, and this is the texture that we're going to get from our pineapple curd. So it's something you can kind of dollop onto the cake, and it is neither too thick nor too thin. We're looking for something that really has a jam-like consistency, and so I really like the way that this is has set up after we put it into the fridge, and so this is really the texture we're looking for once it cools down to either room temperature or cold in the fridge. So if you're cooking along with us today, you may want to put your pineapple curd directly in the fridge, spread it out in a container so it can cool down quickly.
And
I'm going to go ahead, I'll put this pot in the fridge to just see how fast I can get that one to cool down.
It's going to keep cooking like in the cake, right? Might thicken a bit, do you think?
It will, yeah. So as we cook it, when we're cooking something in the oven, we're going to continue to remove moisture from something, right? Ovens dry things out as they are cooking and roasting. And so when we dollop this pineapple curd into the cake, it's adding moisture, but then as it all bakes, we're drying it out and removing some more of that moisture from the cake. The lemon zest, this is what we're going to whisk in last. Lemon zest and just a pinch of salt. Add that into our curd, give it a little bit of a whisk, and then that's the final step there. So I'm going to let that just cool down a little bit, then we can fold in that lemon zest. So we've made our pineapple curd. We're getting it to cool down, and now we're going to move on to mixing our cake. So we're going to talk through our recipe here, and then we're going to mix it and get this thing into the oven to bake. So anytime that I am baking or cooking in general, I love to set myself up for success. And what I mean by that is I love to have all my ingredients ready to go. In restaurants and in French cooking, we call this mise en place, just means having everything in its place. So you're not measuring something as you're trying to build this batter. You have everything ready to go, and then you can swiftly and quickly mix it all and make sure you're doing it all in the right order. So when we're baking, we always love to think about things in wet ingredients and dry ingredients. And so I always like to keep them separate. And this is a really great way to make sure that we're getting the right texture in our batter. And so I always like to start with my wet ingredients in the bowl first. So today we're going to be working with this is a non-dairy cake, and so we're going to be using some oat milk here. This is an unsweetened oat milk, and I'm going to add that 1.5 cups right into the bottom of my bowl and get that going. Next, I'm going to crack my 2 eggs and add these into my wet mixture here. Melanie, can you talk to us a little bit about the benefits of using oat milk in this recipe versus using like a dairy milk?
Well, I think using an oat milk makes this kind of friendlier for potentially anyone who is following, well, this has eggs in it. I was going to say like a vegan diet, but vegetarian diet. Also, allergies. Like a lot of people are concerned about including dairy in their diet because it doesn't always agree with everyone, especially if you have gluten sensitivity. Dairy can also exacerbate, those similar symptoms. So I think that's the major reason we might want to use it here, just to be like sensitive for anyone who might want to exclude dairy from their diet.
Awesome. I think it's great to bring those into our kitchens, even if you can't eat dairy. Try having some recipes without it and see how your body responds to it, if it prefers it or not. And with this recipe, I think we could also use almond milk. We could use some soy
Yeah.
milk. We could use rice milk. So really pick your choice of what you enjoy the most in terms of a non-dairy milk. And then I would recommend having an unsweetened version for this recipe because we are adding other sweeteners. We're using those natural sweetener from the pineapple, right? And then just a small amount of sugar is going to go into this, which we'll talk about in just a little while. But so we got our eggs into our bowl. We have our non-dairy milk of your choice. I'm using that unsweetened oat milk. And then we're going to go in with some vanilla extract, a couple teaspoons of vanilla extract here. Bring in some of that lovely vanilla flavor. And then I'm adding in a third cup of just a neutral oil here. You can use an avocado oil, safflower oil, grapeseed oil. Those are kind of my favorite non-GMO oils to use for a dish like this. And again, kind of going with that non-dairy theme, using this oil is going to just be a little bit different from using butter in a cake, but for this cake, I really think that it works much better than using something like a butter. So I'm just going to whisk together all of these dry ingredients, or excuse me, these wet ingredients, and get ready to go in with my dry ingredients. So we've got our bowl, everything is whisked up. Eggs have been kind of mixed into this, so we don't see them anymore, but we know that they're going to be in there to help this batter set. And then let's talk about our dry ingredients. So we have some tapioca flour here, which is ground tapioca, also known as tapioca starch. So if you see that in the grocery store, these are the same things. And then we have some of that sweet rice flour, which is also known as mochiko. It could be labeled either way in the store, sweet rice flour or possibly mochiko. But make sure you get a finely ground one because that's what we want for this cake for a nice texture once it cooks. And then we just have about half a cup of sugar. We do need a little bit of sweetness into this recipe. The pineapple is providing some, but just a half a cup of sugar in this recipe goes a long way. And so, Melanie, when we're using a half a cup of sugar for a recipe that's serving 12 people, this is a much lower amount of sugar than any other pastry that we would be having for a dessert. How is
Yeah.
that? How do you? Is this good to be using just a little bit of sugar in our baking? What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, sometimes there's no way around it. I mean, you probably bake more than I do. Like sugar has a function, it helps provide structure and flavor. And here, I mean, we are going to have that matcha flavor too. So it's about creating that balance with the bitter. So I think all foods in like moderation. I was thinking about it. If you did want to use a substitute, you could use something like a monk fruit sweetener, which is a little bit more expensive, but it has the same like one-to-one exchange. So half cup of white sugar, you could use a half cup of monk fruit sweetener and eliminate, those calories and excess sugars altogether.
Very cool. I love that idea of having another option for folks that are really looking to not have any, possibly any sugar in their diets, really going for the natural sugars.
Yep.
Very cool. What about matcha? Are there any health benefits for using matcha? So this is our matcha powder here. Beautiful green tea powder.
Yes. So matcha is an excellent source of catechins or EGCG, excuse me, and it's a very powerful antioxidant. So this is supporting all of your cells. If you have inflammation, if you had a really strong, hard workout, if you're in a more stressful kind of moment of life, including more fruits, vegetables, things like matcha can really help like decrease the stress that's activating on your cells, like on that cellular level. So it is delicious, but also is a very, very powerful antioxidant.
That's amazing. I love to hear that because I really enjoy the flavor of matcha, whether it be in a matcha mochi type situation, whether it be in a cup of lovely matcha latte for breakfast instead of coffee. I'm so glad to hear that there are really cool health benefits coming along with all those antioxidants.
Yes.
So we're going to go ahead and think about adding in all of our dry ingredients into our bowl now. But what I want to do is I do want to use a sifter for this part of the dish for the cake. And the reason being is that if we're working with these gluten-free blends here, we have a rice flour and we have our tapioca starch here, they tend to clump up a little bit when we add them in. So I'm gonna sift this. This is not a necessary step, but really just an insurance policy against having any clumps in our cake. So I'm gonna go ahead and just start sifting my rice flour and my tapioca starch here, just giving it kind of a shake back and forth, and then a light tap against my hand. This way I'm not having it kind of all go into the air around me. And I notice I have some coarser pieces of rice flour here, and I'll try to pass through as much as I can with my fingers, and then whatever doesn't go through, we won't use. Really just like maybe 1/8 of a teaspoon of bigger rice chunks there. And then we're also going to sift the matcha because it will do the same thing. It will also clump up in there if we do not sift it.
Oh, I want to say with the matcha, another benefit is it's a really great natural food coloring. Like it gives such a great color to this cake. And if anyone wanted to, follow the Lilo and Stitch thing we were talking about, using blue spirulina in place of matcha to make a blue cake. And that could be another cute little naturally colored thing.
I love that
I'm
idea.
on the fence actually because I have both. I pulled the blue spirulina out and I have my matcha, but I feel like I should go with the original.
Follow
And
your
then-
heart, Melanie.
I'll probably make it again just to see how it turns
Make
out.
both versions and figure out which one you like. I think the blue spirulina, maybe if you're making it for kids, if they're not as into the flavor of matcha, if they're not quite have the taste of for what green tea is. I know as a kid I was not a huge fan of it, but now kind of really grown to love the flavor. But so maybe if you're doing this for your kids, try it with the blue spirulina and see how you feel about that flavor combination with the pineapple. I think it would be really delicious. Last two things I'm adding in: baking powder and then my 1/2 cup of sugar. And so everything is now into my bowl. And I am going to start whisking the batter together. And you can just do this with a regular whisk and a bowl. I don't think you need to bring out, a mixer of any kind. I think this is a pretty easy one to make by hand. And so I like to scrape the sides as I'm doing this so we make sure that we're getting any bits of that rice flour and tapioca starch, making sure we're getting all of that kind of just off of the edges of the bowl as I scrape with my whisk on the bottom and just continue kind of whisking this around. Let me show you here what this is looking like. But it's a beautiful color cake. It's looking pretty bright and vibrantly green, and so I really love this color. I'm going to keep whisking a little harder. I'm seeing a few chunks still in my cake, and so I'm just going to keep whisking until I don't see any more chunks or maybe just a few tiny little ones. But so keep giving a whisk here. And the good news is that in this situation, because we're not using any gluten, we're not worried about over mixing this. And so oftentimes if you're making a cake that has gluten, and you want to be really careful when you're mixing it because you don't want to get it to be too, you don't want to overwork it and make it tough. But in this situation, we can whisk it until we make sure that we have no more lumps. Again, always scraping the sides of the bowl with that whisk. It tends to, you might get some chunks or like little caked areas of tapioca starch and rice flour. And so using the whisk kind of along the sides, and then we'll use a spatula at the very end, make sure that we really combine everything together and we don't have any surprise areas of starch or rice flour. This is looking beautiful. Check out that texture. It's really nice looking batter. It is free of lumps at this point, and it smells amazing. That vanilla plus the matcha powder is really, it's not even cooked yet, and it's smelling good. How's yours looking, Melanie? Looks good.
Yeah, it's looking good. I realized we were talking. I forgot to add the sugar, but I added the sugar, so I think it's fine. I just have to give it a good mix.
Yeah.
And I went with the green, with the matcha.
Very nice. Yeah, it's really a gorgeous batter. I really enjoy the way this looks. All right, so now it is time to get our cake into a pan. So I'm going to be doing it in a 9x13 metal pan with just a little bit of parchment paper on the bottom that we sprayed with just some nonstick spray. Reason being is that once you make a beautiful cake like this, you put it in a pan, but you forget to grease it or you forget to put parchment down, there's a fair chance this will stick if you do not have a really good nonstick pan. So I love using parchment paper in a situation like this just to be kind of extra careful so we're not getting any, we're not leaving any cake behind. So when we cut this and we take it out, that we're able to harvest it out of the pan easily. So I'm going to take a spatula, and we got our greased pan here, and we have our beautiful batter, and we are going to pour this into our pan right here. Try to get every little bit of this. We don't want to leave any behind, so using a spatula is always recommended. And we're filling this about 1/3 of the way up right now because this is going to rise in the oven, right? We have baking powder in there, we have some eggs in there, and so when this cooks and sets, it is going to become a little bit taller than it is right now. So using this 9x13 is a really awesome size pan for this cake. Meg, do we have any questions in the chat?
I'm just talking about how like the flavor that the rice flour adds as well. And we actually had a question earlier on about like the tapioca versus the sweet rice flour. Like, what are they doing in there? They're both rice based, but why both of them?
So the tapioca starch is going to help us as a thickening agent in this case. And so the rice flour we're having for structure and for flavor, but that tapioca starch, what's going to happen here when this cooks is it's going to help set. And so this is going to be a little different than our traditional cake, right? Because we're not using gluten. And so in this case, once we cut it and you kind of see the texture, you'll see what I'm talking about. But it's a little bit, it's going to give it this really lovely kind of bouncy texture to it. And so it's got a nice slight chew to it, but not chewy in a way of like a glutinous cookie or something like that. Chewy in a way where it almost has, because of the rice flour and because of the tapioca starch kind of combining for flavor and texture here, once we cook it, it really does have a really fabulous texture, and that is due to those two ingredients. And so it might be different than cakes that you've had before, but I really love utilizing these starches and the rice flour for a cake like this, so we can bring it to our gluten-free friends, or just eliminating that from our diet for the day can always be beneficial.
Yeah, I love like gluten-free baking and the combinations, and like one flour brings one thing, the other brings an, it's just really smart and scientific.
It is. It is definitely more scientific than our normal combinations of flour, butter, and sugar and eggs. So definitely expanding your culinary repertoire with a dish like this. Melanie, how's it going over there? Looks like you got it into the pan.
Yeah, I'm in the pan.
Awesome.
I'm ready. Yeah.
Very cool.
Should
Last
I
thing,
get my curd?
grab your pineapple curd. Yeah. So my pineapple curd is probably a little more cooled down than yours if you're making this along with us. But still, I think that because we're going to put this into a hot oven, it is okay to use that pineapple curd, even if it's a little bit warm still. It is going to cook in just fine. And even if it's not quite set yet, it'll be easier to swirl into the cake. I find that when you let it cool down fully into the fridge, it gets a little bit of a tighter texture, and so it's harder to really smooth out into the cake. And so I think like a room temp texture, or possibly even like slightly warm, would be easier to really get that swirl action going. But it just depends, again, on your preference and if you made that curd ahead of time or if you made it just now. So we're going to go ahead and take a spoon, and we're going to start dolloping our pineapple curd into the cake. So I'm just going to do about a tablespoon at a time here, and I'm just going to go in a little pattern, try to make around 9 to 12 little dollops of my pineapple curd on top of our batter. And then I'm going to make sure I get all this good stuff out of here, because this pineapple curd is delicious. Don't want to leave any behind. Awesome. Let's have a taste of that little curd, too. So good. It's excellent.
It's pre-dishwashing right there.
Sorry?
Pre-dishwashing.
Yeah.
We're making it easier.
Always lick the spoon. Got to do it. So the last step here before putting this beautiful cake into the oven, we're going to use a skewer, or you can use the end of a butter knife, and we are going to start making a little design on our cake in whatever manner you want. I'm going to take my skewer and just kind of start moving through some of this pineapple curd, and I'm going to make some little kind of star shapes out of each one. But again, your swirl is up to you. Kind of figure out what design you want to do. I'm just kind of running the skewer through in a star shape because I really like the way that looks in the cake. But we're trying to distribute that pineapple curd into some of this batter. And this way we're going to get this sweetener in kind of every bite. And it also looks gorgeous once it comes out of the oven. We'll see little kind of these chunks of pineapple curd cooked into the cake, and it's just really, really lovely. So I'm just doing this kind of star shape all throughout, swirling it all up. You could do little circles, you could do straight lines, really whatever is floating your boat today. And now that I feel like I have this pretty well spread out, I'm just going to kind of move a little bit to the sides and the top, so we're getting every piece with a little bit of pineapple. So now I'm just going to do some kind of big strokes across the top, really swirling it all in. and we're going to leave it right there. We don't want to over mix this into the batter. If we end up over mixing our pineapple curd into the batter, it kind of disappears and we lose that the kind of look that we're going for here, which is going to be kind of having these chunks of pineapple curd throughout the cake. If we were to just kind of whisk this all in, it's going to disappear into the batter. It will still bake just fine, but you won't get that sort of pleasing aesthetic look that we're looking for from doing our little pineapple swirl with a skewer or the back of a knife. So this is looking pretty good. Melanie, how are you feeling about yours?
I think mine was a little warm, so it just kind of like spread out a little bit. I can still see the curd and the matcha like
Awesome.
in certain areas. But I can imagine if it was a little bit tighter, it'd be a little easier to maybe direct. So
for sure. But I think either way, if it's not fully spread into the batter, we're still going to get those chunks because like we talked about, as it cooks, that curd will continue to firm up a little bit as we remove moisture from the cake in the oven and as the batter kind of sets around it. So I'm hoping you still get a very similar texture to what I have here. So let's go ahead and put this into the oven. We're going to go in at 350 degrees. And this is going to take about 45 to 50 minutes to cook. So I'm going to go ahead, got a preheated oven going here, and pop this in. And I know that you probably all wanted to hear us talk for about 50 more minutes about pineapple and the benefits, but great news, we made a little swap out earlier. So we baked one this morning, and here I have our beautiful pineapple and mochi matcha cake. So you can see these awesome chunks of that pineapple curd that have cooked into our cake. It looks awesome. It has maintained that beautiful green color, and then around the edges we just get a light golden brown color from this. And so I'm so excited to taste this and tell you how delicious it is. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a slice in half first. I think it's a nice way to just get it out of the pan. Sometimes it can be a little bit challenging in a large pan like this in a 9x13 to remove the whole cake without breaking it into pieces. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut it in half first.
Chef Nicco, for folks cooking at home, and since this is a gluten-free cake, can you tell like some of the tells when you know that it's done?
Yes, absolutely. So when I'm checking a cake like this, because it might be cooking a little bit differently than what we're used to, especially when it comes out of the oven, it's going to be a little bit bouncy, a little bit jiggly still, and that is totally fine. That's kind of that creamy texture we're looking for on the inside. We don't want this to be like fully set when it comes out of the oven. So I like to take a skewer, and I poke into the cake very similarly to how I would do a brownie or a cookie, just to make sure that that inside is cooked. And if I pull my skewer out and it is nice and dry, and I'm not bringing any of that batter back out with me, I know that this is fully cooked. And then also, another trick with cakes that I always like to look at and always like to talk about is that the edges of the pan, you'll notice that the cake pulls away a tiny bit from the edges of the pan. I'm not sure if we can see this. Yeah, so right here, kind of on my back side of the pan here, I can stick this skewer behind the cake into the pan, and I'm noticing that it has kind of shrunk up a tiny bit and pulled away from the sides. So that's a visual cue that you can use is your cake having that nice little bit of golden brown around the edges, and is it pulling away from the sides by, maybe it's a quarter of a centimeter. It's a very small amount, but it's a good visual check and a visual cue anytime you're cooking a cake is that it's going to pull away from the pan on the sides once it's cooked. And so that goes for a gluten-free cake and a glutinous cake. So those are my go-tos, is looking for that texture on the edge and then checking it with a knife, a skewer, or a cake tester just to see, has this dried out fully and have we cooked it to where we want to take it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is your tip? I know you're cutting. The dietitian in me says, what is this? 12 servings. So what is your trick to making sure portions are equal? Like if you wanted to really cut it into the 12 servings that.
Great question. I always think of this as a grid. How do I make 12? We go 4 by 3. So I like to go 3 the long way. I think that makes the most sense. And then we would do our 4 by just going in half here and then in half one more time. So we get 4 across the long way of the pan and then 4 across the short way of the pan and then 3 across the long way of the pan, and boom, we've got our 12 portions. So it's definitely always think about what grid am I doing here, what number am I trying to get to, and what do we want each side to have. So a 4 by 3 will work great to make those 12 portions if we're looking for making sure that we're getting the exact serving size so we know the calorie amounts, the sugar amounts, etc.
And it's a pretty good serving It's a pretty good serving
It
size.
is. I would say that it's a very, very generous serving. Let's cut across the other direction here, and I'm going to start pulling out a couple pieces because I can't wait to taste this. And this is a cake, I'm going to say cutting it in the pan is going to be a little bit easier than trying to pull it out of the pan. It is a little bit more fragile and a little bit more gooey on the inside still. This one came out of the oven about 45 minutes ago, so it's not fully cool. But this cake is really nice to eat when it's a little bit warm still. I really enjoy the texture of this cake when it's just a slight bit warm to the touch. All right, let's pull out a couple pieces and start taking a look. Oh my goodness, this is beautiful. Look at that. I'm not sure we can do a little close-up on this piece of the cake right here, but look at that beautiful kind of texture between the matcha, the pineapple. We get that really nice green color here. We get that kind of little golden brown on the top and the bottom, but then the inside of it just has an amazing texture and still slightly warm to the touch. And so I think this is a really be nice to have this cake slightly warmed. I'm just going to pull out a couple pieces here so we can look at them. And then my favorite time to eat. Look at these. These are awesome. All right. Let's give it a taste. Mmm. The flavors are fantastic. And the texture. So for folks that are not familiar with mochi, you get this kind of like lovely chewy texture when you're working with that mochiko, that rice flour. And so when you eat this and it has that slight bit of warmth to it, it's just such a perfect bite. I got a little bit of that pineapple in my first bite. And the sweetness and the balance of those two flavors is really excellent together. And the flavor of the rice flour, the vanilla, and that pineapple curd all together, really, they work amazingly well. So another bite for me. That is delicious.
I'm
Super
so
unique.
jealous.
You'll be eating yours soon enough. Give it a little while to cool down, but I think about 40 minutes was really nice because then it still has a little bit of warmth to it.
Yeah.
You could also, cut them if you wanted to warm them up for a party, pop them back in the oven on a tray just for like 2 or 3 minutes just to give it a little bit of warmth once they're cut, and then you can put them on a platter. And we were talking earlier, if you had a little bit of extra pineapple curd and you wanted to dollop a little bit on top, if you wanted a little bit of extra pineapple curd, that could be a nice way to use the leftover curd as well.
Nice. I love it. Can't wait to try it. Thank you.
We love these recipes with a healthy spin on them, using these natural sugars, talking about how beneficial all of these cooking with fruits, especially using the pineapple for all the enzymatic action and the vitamins in there. Really excellent. So thank you so much for joining us today, Melanie. This has been really fun.
You're welcome.
So
can't wait to do it again.
Join us next time. We are going to be doing an Easy Summer Eats class. That's going to be on 6/18 at 11 a.m. Pacific time. That's going to be our next one. And find this class and all of our other classes on demand. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.